an old Jew and a former bartender are the ones teaching America how to organize again.
Welcome to Tech.
Well, hello. Yes, sir.
Is this much better?
It appears better. I don't know what the difference is, but you know what? I never know what the difference is until we see it. All right. So tell me about the world's most polite riot. Is that...
John, this wasn't a polite riot at all. So, freedom of speech in India. I don't think there's much protection for it, at least now.
Be very careful how you say this, please.
Okay. So, the place that I perform in, you used to always tell me, you're going to get into trouble if you say that, you're going to get into trouble if you say this. So I never did any of those jokes that we randomly discuss on when I talk to you.
Right.
Some guy did a joke at the place that I perform in Mumbai, and I'm supposed to do a show like 2 weeks from now there. He did a show there like maybe a week ago, but shared it on social media on Sunday night. Monday morning, the political supporters of his came in there, trashed the hotel, which is what the comedy club is in.
Right.
Here's the funny part. Then the government showed up and said, you guys don't have the right permitting for these kind of buildings type thing, and demolished a section of it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so you're telling me our future here in America is what you're telling me right there.
Yeah.
What, you know, the my fear on stuff like that is one of many things. Over here, I really do feel like the hype behind the environment we live in is dying off, for the sheer fact that even supporters are looking at it going, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about your guys' stuff because, there's so many things that people can go after you for over there. And here, I always took the risk here of politics affecting my business.
Mm-hmm.
And and I don't know how many audience members know, I own 2 really small restaurants in the same building. And the problem I have is obviously if somebody does something to the restaurants, they can put me out of business. Mm-hmm. But I'm also old enough where, that would be my retirement time, But if I was younger, the problem is how do you be an effective comic and not deal with that kind of stuff,
And Sean, the weird part is that venue actually has like poetry night, has like a music night, has stand-up on the weekends.
Yeah.
It's just a place for artists. Like they tell you when you sign your disclosures and you're performing on their stages that the venue is not responsible for what your act is about. So you can do whatever your act is about. And now they've gone after the owners, and a charge like this could be like, 7 years in prison?
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. If it holds.
And my guess is your prisons are not as sweet as our prisons, which, you
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Look, so we back in the 60s had a couple of comedians that were willing to speak truth to power, for lack of a better word, but they didn't have social media. So, you do a show and it takes months for people to hear about it. And even by the time they hear about it, is that really what you did in the show? Social media, it's the next day or the same night. And so I don't feel like we have this enormous amount of rabid fans that we had just 3 months ago for the person here that it's not the one I'm most concerned with. Elon Musk is still the one I'm most concerned with.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, I'm not worried about the guy that's got the real job. I'm worried about this other guy that has a fake job, firing a bunch of other fake people. I mean, it is.
What your worry is actually, so we have something called version control in software. So that when you get into the system, whose development ID was used to update the code last.
Right.
It shows you the change logs. Right. So say Elon gets out of government. Right. Who is that poor person who's going to come and look at all this code and figure out what he has added in there? There might be little bits of code that is still helping him out in some weird area.
Of course it is. Mm-hmm. Look, the challenge here is Trump is probably trying to use Elon Musk as a useful idiot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worked. I mean, the takedown of Tesla. Tesla had a 9:00 meeting a couple of days ago, all hands on deck, and now Elon's back in charge and all this other shit, which is what every failing company does.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is literally the plan of how to save a failing company. His company isn't failing.
Mm-hmm.
He, as a public figure, has turned out to be an asshole. That's what happened. And, everyone thought he was kind of this twerky, weird, obviously autistic, at least borderline autistic guy with very, very interesting ideas. And look, he can make good rockets. Mm-hmm. But if NASA's rockets blew up as much as his rockets did, they'd shut that thing down.
Oh, yeah. Ages ago.
I mean, yeah, it's a difficult science, and nobody really argues that. So now he's got the richest guy in Mexico took an $8 billion deal away from him, and he's just hiring somebody else. And this is all because of his personality, not his talent.
Yeah.
Now, he could have gone in and done the Doge thing, and really and truly, everybody in America needs $1 trillion cut off of our fat budget, because over the years, everybody does a deal for their finance person in politics. It's the way it works.
Yeah.
It's the way it's always worked. This isn't new. Just be quiet about it. Yeah. Don't bring in a bunch of arrogant little 21-year-olds who don't know. Just because something has a sign on the door saying it does one thing in government does not mean that's what it's there for.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And they cut some of those. And, a lot of those guys are not just trained killers. They're trained mass murderers.
That would be actually what they're doing.
And what does an unemployed mass murderer do? They figure out a way to make money. And what do they do best? So there has to be a 3-stage thought process. Okay, so you and I are at this stupid political meeting in Edmond where the guy literally says, I'm glad you're friends here. I like brown people.
I know.
And I know this is fresh in your memory. It's fresh in my memory. That is not how actual government works. That's how a stupid Democratic
what was it like
party. Well, they were the John Birch Society or some shit like that. They weren't even Democrats. That was their own little group of weirdos. And you and I just happened to be in there rolling our eyes going, I just can't believe this is what I'm hearing. And that's what everybody thinks government is. You get into federal government and they're doing stuff all over the world and you decide, I'm going to cut 10% of that. As soon as that 10% cut goes in, you've got people dying on another continent 2 weeks later.
Yeah. Like, think about the interconnectivity of these things, because just recently I remembered that when I was filing for some documents for Daisy to see whether I can bring her to India, it was Daisy's my dog, which is why Sean's laughing, but it's basically the USDA that does that. And they have a perfectly good system.
Right.
They do everything from that to, like, if you have to take a horse across the country to like for the Olympics. That's the guy who gives you permission to take it in and out. Eh?
Right. Yeah. So they are also the same people. If you want sausage and you want to sell it in another state, you have to approve of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because much like in every country, local laws become obsolete when you can pay off a health inspector for $50 or $100. And we don't want 100,000 pounds of that sausage going somewhere else. Everybody here is used to whatever disease came from it. It's just big government. So anybody that's in business would go, yes, we need to figure out a way to cut this. The other way to do that is to find some software that would literally use AI to scan most applications. The problem is where does that information go?
Yeah.
The internet is not secure.
Not at all, dude.
Right. So maybe that's why people do those jobs. The other thing is maybe the reason people do those jobs is they were ex-military and we need them to have a job. Because guess what we trained them to do? Create mayhem.
Yeah.
And we want them to have a job so that doesn't happen. And, how do you explain that to somebody in a budget? You go, really, you don't want Dave unemployed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't want some
So
of these people to have too much of free time on their hands because
right. And so what I would tell you is I still have assholes that argue with me. I'm never on Twitter because Twitter is now just a foghorn, leghorn of whatever the jizz is they're selling in Washington that day.
Yeah.
It's just pointless. And so now this Thursday, I'll be at Oklahoma State Department of Ed meeting fighting the same guy that I've done a pretty good job of taking down and seeing if we can finish him off.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not worried about violence there, except there always is a couple of people that show up armed. But if you show up armed, I'm not as worried about you as if you have a gun hidden in your leg holster or something. That's the one if you show up and you got a sidearm and you're walking around like a peacock okay. Yeah, we call it peacocking. And they are more than likely not there to do anything, or they wouldn't be so obvious because we all have an eye on them, right? Mm-hmm. They're there to intimidate. Yeah. The one who's really going to do the damage is somebody else. I had a preacher that I exposed on OCPAC named Wade Burleson. And Wade, he talks like this. And with me, he's like, and he owns a bar. And his language, oh my God. So Wade's a joke. And he's a retired preacher from Enid, Oklahoma. But he did an interview with a TV station. He said, these leftist activists, the time is coming, or the reckoning is coming. Okay.
Oh,
so is that a threat? Because I'm who he's talking about.
It technically is a threat, right?
Right.
When you look at it.
And I'm going to see Wade tomorrow, and I'm going to go, hey, MF, right here. Where's my reckoning?
Sean, when you see him next time, I want you to actually ask him some details about what sort of clothing are we supposed to wear during the rapture.
During the reckoning?
Oh, no. For the sole reason that if you're suddenly pulled out of your clothes and your jockstrap gets caught on something,
right?
Hurt a lot.
Do we get pulled back down?
Is it all like loose clothing, or do we have some sort of dress code?
Okay, you and I went to Catholic school too long. That's what I will tell you. My answer is on that one. Look, assuming the rapture's real and that and Paul was the one that
real.
Yeah, Paul, the reckoning, and that's what he's going to say. It's a religious thing, Sean. When you die, you're going to, and that's why I don't want this guy teaching religion to my grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a salesman. He's a cheap used car salesman that was in a flood and then in a fire, and they put paint on it. But so we're dealing with emotional want to do it. I'm not worried about somebody coming in the front door and tearing up my place because my thought is, well, I've got insurance. Yeah. I'll just retire. I mean, honestly, I'll just retire. So I'm not as concerned with that. I am concerned that that we are now taking credentials away from law firms that did lawsuits against Donald Trump. Well, isn't that everybody that did a lawsuit against him?
If you go back all the way till he started doing business till now, that would be maybe 10,000 to 15,000 law firms.
Right. So he has made a living out of going to court. And what I mean by that, it hasn't been profitable until recently when ABC News gave him $15 million. And these other people, those are not settlements. Those are cash giveaways. Mm-hmm. Should we say that? I mean, they're just trying to do business in this era.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of other countries, and I'm not saying India, have been doing business that way forever. It isn't new.
There are always stories you read, like in The Guardian, about how even if no one's using like an entire flow in a Trump Tower, it is rented by Saudi businessmen and just left there. And you know what that is if he's not using it.
And now you have to look at Bitcoin. He's got his own Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
He holds 80% of those assets.
Oh, God. That is like perfect market manipulation, like if I've ever seen it.
Right. I mean, it was brilliant. So you look at what he did with Tesla at the White House. The Kennedy family, their dad that used to bring in all the liquor with the Italians, used to market manipulate like that. He would buy a stock and then he'd go out and brag about the stock. There was no internet back then, so he'd have to figure out a way to get it on TV. That's why they made that illegal. It's illegal. But in the modern day, if you bring up the fact that it's illegal, does your law firm get your credentials pulled? I mean, that is where we are right now. And am I worried about it? No, I'm concerned that this is what my kids are growing up in. Or when you return over here, you're not used to having to behave differently in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, so back to the days of where the cameras were following you and I basically at the DMV, that's normal now.
Yeah. What my concern is that, check it out, that some of the people with the visas that I used to be on got stopped at immigration, and they were asked to open their social media accounts and show if they posted anything negative about Trump.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we are. So look, what I would say is thank God the guy's had a poor diet most of his life.
Yeah. Sean, imagine he was healthy.
Right. Yeah. If he was healthy and we were looking at 4 full years of this, but JD Vance is an absolute scumbag. He is a redneck from the hills. I mean, and this boy grew up rough. And so you talk about a guy that will know how to get things for himself. And, he's either Yale or Harvard. I don't remember which one. I watched his movie.
Even I did.
Yeah. And it's a good story. It is the American dream story until you go from being a decent human, calling things like you see them, to being part of the problem. So my thing at this point now, so I had a guy playing in a band here last night, and I said, how's everything going? He goes, well, I just go into work every Monday to see if I still have a job. Now, he's a federal worker. I don't know what he does for a job, but, in America, if you got a federal job, generally you got paid decent, and you had health care, and you had a retirement. Pretty damn good job. And hell, man, they're getting a chopping block like corporations were back in the 70s. So back then, they would fire all these people, and then whoever did the firing got the huge bonus.
Oh, yeah.
It's an oxymoron. And so you own a company, I own companies, and you go, we never shut down a company because it's over.
Yeah.
Now, we only do that if we're losing just a shit ton of money. Government isn't supposed to make money. It isn't. And so I don't know where all this reckoning for all these folks comes in, like Wade Burleson said, the reckoning.
But I do not know these idiots who think that government should be run like a business, because you do not.
Oh, yes, one of them. He used to be your apprentice.
He thought it that way.
He's like, I don't think this is a bad thing. And I go, but what he's used to seeing is us in city government. Once you get beyond city government really is mostly transparent because it's small enough. You get into county, it gets murky. You get into statewide, it gets really murky. Yeah. But $15 billion passed through the hands of the state of Oklahoma. I mean, that's a lot of money. And, if you're nefarious, I mean, why would anyone get into politics right now?
Unless you have something corrupt to do. There is no point getting into it.
Or somebody's going, hey, if you want to get elected, here's enough money to get elected. Now you owe that person. So I'm interested to see how the fight turns out, if that makes sense. Because I get a lot of people in here every day going, how do I get in? And I'm honest with them. I go, dude, I needed you a year and a half ago.
Yeah, when you ran for DNC chair, they should have been around then. Back then, they
not DNC chair, Democratic chair, but you go. But the difference on that is okay. So it's corrupted from the inside. So when Kathy wanted to run for the same position, 1,200 people were the voters. By the time I tried to run, 380 people were left voting.
You can pretty much put them in an auditorium and tell them, raise your hands, we'll figure out who won this damn thing.
Right. And so even from the interior, the cancer exists there. So how do you fix that? So if you personally, if you wanted to get involved in the Democratic Party because you think Donald Trump's party, because it's not the Republican Party anymore, it's Donald Trump's party, and you think they're corrupt, you have to go to a meeting with a bunch of people you don't know, get in a group of people you don't know, knock doors of people in your neighborhood for people you don't know that just ran for office, right? That's the job you've agreed to. And then to move up in that, you have to go to county meetings and do the same thing. And then you have to go to the state convention for 3 days. Basically, you need to not have a job.
Yeah, that has to be a full-time job if you're trying to run for any sort of
Right.
office. Mm-hmm.
And so you go, so in order to really fix something, you have to put in time people just don't have anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that can afford to do that are either on government assistance or retired. And neither one of them are really people you want in charge of a modern government. Because, like, so let's say I get elected to something reasonably decent.
Mm-hmm.
I've always you got on the phone and go, hey man, isn't there an app for this shit? We're spending $30 million on this thing, and I can fix it for $1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have to figure out how to sell it to everybody.
Yeah.
So
problem of who's losing a job, right? At that point.
Right. I mean, so
Who's losing a contract?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where it goes from here. And in your guys' line of work. So let's say I bring you in to do something like that. There's 15 other guys who want the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so their sole job is to cut you down and say they can do it better.
Or they can do it for a lower cost, which is what I usually recruit on.
Right. Yeah. And then they get on the news and go, well, I could have done this. He didn't want that. He wanted an immigrant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, Sean, then you'll get unelected very quickly thanks to this one move.
Right. So it's tricky, but I'm not the gloom and doom guy. I mean, this isn't the first time America's had issues. This is just the most obvious. Mm-hmm. And is it the most? It appears to be one of the more corrupt. But this isn't the first time the White House has been sold.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just like everybody else. We are England. Somebody said we are England's drug addicted son. You're like, well, okay. I mean, it kind of looks like it. We need to have an intervention.
I know this is going to sound mean, but you're like basically a Hunter Biden to show.
Right. Yeah, I mean, think about, but it isn't wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't. We are, whether anybody in America likes it or knows it, that's what we came from.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at England during Boris Johnson, that's where we are.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson knew he was lying his ass off about healthcare in England. He knew it. He didn't care with his stupid hair. And, the guy was a slob. Wasn't he born in America as well?
I thought he was. He was born somewhere weird.
I think I'm right. I'm pretty sure it was us that gave you that. And and so he corrupted the government. And people were like, well, healthcare really does need to be better. And so they tried to do the right thing and vote for it. And they got scammed.
Mm-hmm.
So is that Rupert Murdoch's fault? Or is that the English people's fault? Or in another country, they just take Boris out and solve the problem. Mm-hmm. But yet he's still running around and like nothing happened.
Yeah, that's the weird part about it, right?
So we are their bastard son. I mean, that's just the truth. And so are we that special? Are we really that special? Or does what you just had happen at that comedy store right around the corner for us here?
It is scary because you do not know, like you can see the slow build up to such things, but still it breaks something. People don't sit up and pay attention.
Correct. And we've had a pretty good run here.
Mm-hmm.
Ups, downs, everything. Our economy is still solid, but if you look at all the numbers, we're in for trouble here in about 6 months or a year.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't, so to somebody like me, so I own 2 restaurants. One's expensive and the other one's cheaper. Well, the cheaper one will just be busier and the expensive one will be less busy.
Yeah. At least you're diversified that way.
Right. So I'll adjust. I'm interested to see if these couple of 100,000 people become unemployed that had money.
Mm.
What does that do to local little economies? Because, somebody like that, their expenditures are probably $100,000. They probably have $40,000 in money they can spend. Mm. And that dries up.
Yeah.
And then they become a toll on the system rather than the person paying in. And so I just don't understand the mathematics behind it. And I've been in business over 40 years.
Mm-hmm. There is this old bit that I wanted to tell you about that used to be on the BBC. where it's this minister who's asking two of his employees. He's like, hey guys, can you run this model and see if England's economy would be better if we just killed all the poor?
Right.
And they're like, oh no, we can't do that. That's really morally bad. And he's like, is that the only reason you're not doing it?
Okay, that's pretty good. So one of my daughters used to run these scenarios for the state senate here,
mm-hmm.
and that was her actual job. So you gave her an idea, and she'd figure out what it was going to cost.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just what it's going to cost. Where are you going to get the money?
Yeah.
And look, everybody has an angle, and I would tell anyone that's involved, left, right, or center,
mm-hmm.
don't buy all into your guy's thing.
Oh.
Everybody's got an angle, man.
Mm-hmm. Everybody.
So, you look at your generation. So what are you, one generation behind me?
Mm-hmm.
And I watched, an Indian comedian go, we all prayed for some solution to the housing crisis. And he said, and it came in 2020. And then we wanted everybody to wear masks. And really, what you needed them to do was die off. Mm-hmm. And the housing crisis is solved. So are you to blame or am I to blame? Which one of our generations?
That is actually a valid point, right? See, that used to be my biggest bit when I used to be like, when I used to get stuck in traffic, I used to always tell the audience, the only thing that goes through my head is, I think these bastards lied to me about how many people died during COVID. It surely wasn't enough.
Yeah. And was that the opportunity for the economy to change?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It sucks, but this isn't new. You know what the plague did? It wiped out a whole bunch of people. So there were some things available.
Yeah.
The famine in Ireland wiped out literally 25% of the population. Another 25 went to America. Guess what? Mm-hmm. Easier to live in Ireland at that point. You were just lonely.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying any of this really as a joke. I'm just, this isn't our first go around. And do we survive as a representative democracy? Who represents me now?
Yeah, it's always fractured this way, right? It wasn't like there was a true, proper democracy out there ever.
Right. My Congressman, Stephanie Bice, I know her personally. Guess what? She does not represent me.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some of her stuff and I'm like,
Right. Well, you know what she's done? What every politician does, whatever they need to do to survive. So she keeps making $175,000 a year and put her kids through college.
Yeah.
But that doesn't represent me. So a representative democracy does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
Because the amount of money she has to have to run on is not going to come from people like me.
Oh, yeah. It's very fair. Like, I think, what was it? Besides Bernie Sanders, I don't think anyone had that kind of a grassroots movement where people get $10 and that was what funded the initial part of the campaign.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which was astounding. Because so do you think Bernie ever really wanted to be president, or do you think Bernie loves just sticking the knife in the side? Because
I think it was the latter. He just wanted people to be aware of the issues that he was talking about.
And he and AOC, an old Jew and a former bartender, are the ones teaching America how to organize again.
Yeah.
Because we used to organize through unions, essentially. They would teach you how to do it. Well, they're gone. So who's left to teach you to organize to go against the hugely funded operation on the right? And I love the fact that Bernie is still willing to do that. Mm-hmm. And AOC is getting smeared enough now where they believe she's a real threat to run for president. And you know what? I would hire a former bartender. So we've got a lady here that is our county clerk that used to work at Hooters.
Okay.
And people said, why did you support her when she ran? And I said, if she could deal with the men at Hooters, she's just fine down at county government.
Oh, yeah.
And if you were a good-looking Latina woman bartender, if you could deal with those those people, you'll be just fine.
Mm-hmm. Dealing with the old men in Congress.
Because that's what it is. Those are the same guys that were, making offers and giving phone numbers and everything as soon as their wife went to the bathroom. I mean, she knows how it works. This county clerk, you never hear anything bad about the place. because she knows how to play it, and she's still really good looking. And AOC's still really good looking. The men that don't like that are the ones that got turned down by somebody like her.
Oh, yeah.
And look, that's who they appear to believe is the next person.
It might be. It's like
it might be right, but here's what Democrats always think: if we can just get the Latino vote, and they go, we'll put a Latina up, and we'll get the Latino vote, and you go, they're staunch conservative Catholics. You're not going to get their vote.
Yeah.
Even though they're poor and they work their ever-loving asses off, they're voting the way their priest tells them to vote. True. Now, is there a new generation coming forward? Yeah, but do they vote? Young people usually don't vote. They just don't.
See, that's the one thing that would be interesting to see if those, like a campaign like Bernie and AOC brings the young people out to vote. That would be the only change.
It's an adorable combination. So they are, my hope lies with an old Jew and a good-looking young Latina woman, because both of them are smart and both of them are talented. I'm not sure either one really wants to be president, but I think they're doing a great job with these 10,000 person town halls.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing.
Because they're full. And you want to scare somebody, have an old Jew and a young Latina woman fill up a hall with 10,000 people. It had, look, the Bernie event I covered here when he beat Hillary Clinton in our primary. My son and I were there, and I was doing sound for Mitchell in the Morning show. And the next morning I'm on the radio and I go, look, this guy's going to win. And they literally heckled me in the studio, heckled me. And I go, I'm telling you, he's going to win by 5. And so the next week after the guy wins, they were like, how did you see that? And I go, I'd never been to a better political rally in my entire life. Everyone was happy to be there. And usually half the people are like, oh, God, here we are.
Like they were dragged by someone or forced by someone to show up.
Yeah. I mean, so I see that same energy, and that's the only energy that gets to fight this madness on the other side. So before we go, obviously yesterday you probably saw the dust up with all these guys on Signal.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
So remember, Hogseth is a drunk. The only thing that almost kept him from getting in is because he was such a bad drunk.
Yeah.
He just behaved like a drunk. That's what drunks do.
Add people that's like waking up in the morning and looking at your phone and going like, who the hell texted this person?
Who texted somebody named Ellen? Oh God, I sent a photo too. I mean, or was all this a plan to get that guy in there? So this dust up is happening while they're pickpocketing you on the other side. I am always concerned with the shell game.
I know. It's always like something to distract you. The sleight of hand.
Yeah, and this is a good distraction. So now I'm looking, I got my hand. It's like I'm in a confessional. I'm trying to make sure there's no holes on the wall. I'm glad you got the joke. I don't know if everybody else will get it, but All right, man, let's get out of here. I love you. Tell your family I said hi. Tell Christine I said hi.
Will do. All right.
Have fun. See you, bye.